Here we go with game number 1 of the 2023 World Chess Championship. We have Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces, Liren with the black pieces. This is going to be a no spoiler recap, but I will give you a hint that this game is not a 0.00 all the way through stockfish draw. So we do get a little bit of excitement coming up. E4 by Jan, this is his main weapon. E5 by Ding, also his main response. So it'll be interesting to see which player deviates from their standard openings first. Now we see a Roy Lopez, that's when the bishop comes to b5. Again, the players are following their main weapons. a6, bishop drops back, knight f6, all standard moves out of the opening. And now this is the first new move for these two players, and it comes from Jan Nepomniachtchi. So Jan is deciding, I'm going to break from my normal plans, and I'm going to capture on c6. And in 56 previous games by Jan, he had never captured on c6. So Ding takes back with the d-pawn. And interestingly, in the database, Ding has 3 games in this line. And one was from a chess.com titled Tuesday as recently as December of last year against Grischuk. And he's also played it in 2019 against Magnus Carlsen and Anish Giri. So you know that Jan knows about all 3 of those games. So it seems like so far the game is a little bit in Jan's court because he knows what Ding's going to do, and Ding probably did not expect this from Jan. So rook to e1, defending this pawn, knight d7, and we're still following 86 total games in the database. d4, takes. Now, one thing I like to look at when evaluating a position is what are the imbalances? And we see here that black has 4 queenside pawns to white's 3. And on the flip side, there's 4 kingside pawns for Jan to Ding's 3. And we also have a difference with the minor pieces, which are the knights and the bishops. We see the bishop pair for Ding Liren, and Jan only has 1 bishop. So bishop pair tends to be an advantage for that player. So bishop pair advantage for Ding. But we do have this pawn structure advantage for Jan because Ding has the doubled c-pawns. So let's see how that plays out. Castle, bishop f4, knight c5. Offering the queen trade. And here Jan plays queen to e3. At this point, we were following about 20 games in the database. It's most common to go for the queen trade, allowing these queens to swap. But instead, Jan decides, I'm going to bring the queen back. And I think he wants to play fighting chess right out of the gates. And queen to e3 is a nice move. It avoids the queen trade, and he gets to play against these double pawns long term. Bishop to g4. And now we're in the first new position. Instead of bishop to g4, in the database, knight to e6 was played in all 7 prior games. So this is brand new territory now, bishop to g4. And the computer is not in love with this move. It seems to be a slight inaccuracy. I think it's pretty minor. And the reason the bishop to g4 is a slight inaccuracy is exactly how Jan played it. Knight to d4. It makes the bishop look a little bit silly sitting out on g4. What's it doing? There's nothing for that bishop to attack. And maybe it was better to play knight e6 and not allowing knight d4 and putting the pressure on the f4 bishop. Queen d7, connecting the rooks. And even though this position is symmetric in terms of the material on the board, minus the bishop pair, there is some dynamic play all of a sudden. Like black wants to play rook d8, threaten to win the knight. And as we'll see in a couple moves, there's some crazy tactics coming up for white. Knight c3. Now here there's a combination of moves that white wants to play. White being Jan. Jan wants to play h3, kick that bishop back, g4, kick it back again, and plant the knight on f5, starting to target the dark squares around the black king. So look for that kingside expansion by Jan. Rook a to d8. And this is a counter by Ding Liren. He wants to play queen takes d4. It's threatening to win the knight. So here knight f5 was played in the game, but there's a really interesting try that Jan did not go for, and that's h3. And here's the idea with h3. If bishop to h5, knight to f5 can be played, and that's just a slightly better version of what we saw in the game. So that would be an improvement for Jan. Okay, but what if queen takes d4? That's the obvious question. That's the obvious move. What if Ding just tries to win that piece on d4? Now, there's a brilliant move here. If you want to pause the video, see if you can find it. But it is knight to d5. This threatens to win the queen and it threatens to win the bishop with check. It's a crazy move. So the best reply for black is bishop to f6, after which white can take. And now queen takes f6 doesn't work well because of bishop g5, skewering the queen to the rook. So black has to take with the pawn. That's the best move. And now there's queen to g3, pinning the g4 bishop to the black king. And after knight takes e4, black trying to grab another pawn, we have queen takes g4 check. And at this point, black is up one pawn, but look at the black king. The g7 square is open, the queen's in the area, there's the bishop out here. Even though black is up a pawn, white actually has a pretty big advantage here. So I think h3 would have been an interesting try in this position by Jan to either get an improved version of the game, right? Bishop going back, knight f5, or getting that crazy line where it looks like white's playing for a dangerous kingside attack all of a sudden. Okay, so knight f5 played in the game. Knight to e6, and this opens up the idea of bishop to c5. So black hasn't been able to use the bishop pair yet in this game. All of a sudden the bishop pair is starting to come to life, so Jan can't really allow that, and he takes the bishop on e7. Queen takes e7 back, and at this point we see bishop to g3, not allowing the trade. Knight takes f4. So Jan's just trying to hold a small advantage here. The bishop pair is gone, but we do still have the doubled pawns for black. And there's a 4 versus 3 advantage of pawns on the king side for white. So bishop back to h5, pawn to f3, pawn to f6. And these moves look a little bit strange, but the idea is both sides are trying to improve their bishops by putting their pawns on the opposite colored squares, right? So see how all of white's pawns are on light squares, black's pawns are on dark squares. It's the opposite of their bishops. Now we see king to h2 by Jan, bishop to f7 by Ding. So again, they're just trying to improve their positions very slightly. And if we look at the pawns again, queen side advantage for Ding, king side advantage for Jan. That should dictate the action, right? Jan should be playing on the king side. Jan should look to play a move like pawn to f4, try to attack over here, and expect Ding to play a move like b5, c5, maybe queen to b4, and try to play for an advantage on the queen side. So the position's very solid, no big weaknesses, but that's what I would expect. King side play by Jan, queen side play by Ding. Rook a to d1, pawn to b6, pawn to a3, and here you can tell Jan is playing prophylactic chess. This prevents queen to b4, but Jan is not going for that kingside play yet with pawn to f4. Pawn a5 by Ding, knight to e2. This makes a lot of sense. Reroute the knight. It could come out to d4 or it could come out to f4. And now here Ding is going for some simplifications. Rook takes d1, rook takes back, and rook to d8. Jan has had a slight lead all game, and I think that's why Ding is thinking, let's get some trades off, let's head to an endgame, and he's only going to want to do this in an endgame where he believes he can hold the draw. So here, there's an interesting move by Jan, rook to d3, and this is one that we all can learn from. There's only one open file on the board, that's this d file. And a big thing in endgames is to control the open files. So in this case, the file is contested equally. Each side has a rook on the d file. After rook to d3, if you gave white a free move here, which Ding kind of does, queen to d2 can be played, and all of a sudden, this rook is being attacked by 2 pieces on the d file, and Ding cannot easily get his queen to the d file. So Ding plays c5, queen to d2, and I'm a little bit surprised that Ding allowed this. And now he plays c6. This is the first mistake of the game, and now Jan is pressing for an advantage. So let's look at the stronger version of this move. Rook takes d3, queen takes d3, and c6. And what we'll see here is if Jan tries to get his queen to attack these 2 weak pawns, the pawns that aren't defended by any other pawns, like let's say queen to a6, there's now queen to d8, offering the queen trade in a case where, or sorry, not offering queen trade, but putting the queen on the open file for black. And in the game, this queen was on d2 for white. It was able to poke out to f4, threatening to come in here, and the knight was on an awkward square d8. So we're going to go through that now, but that's what black should have done. Rook takes d3 first, slightly better. c6 played, first mistake of the game. It's a small one, but now after rook takes rook, knight takes queen f4, Jan is pressing a little bit. This threatens queen c7 and queen to b8, and we didn't see that in the other line if Ding would have traded rooks first. Pawn to b5, queen to b8, pinning the knight to the king and threatening bishop to c7, which would win the knight. So king h7 played, getting off the back rank, bishop to d6, and knight to g3. So this knight is eyeing the f5 square. Jan is doing a great job putting all of his pieces on active squares, and this puts a lot of pressure on Ding. And Ding was actually getting lower on time. So we're at move 30 here, and they don't reach bonus time until move 40. So there's about 10 moves to go. Instead of knight to g3, one line that I looked at that I thought was interesting was offer the queen trade. This is something that Jan had been avoiding so far in this game. He seems to not want the queen trade. Let's see what happens. If queen takes c7, bishop takes back. It's the knight and pawn. So knight to b7 defends it. And now there's this slow approach by Jan. King to g3. This is a grinding style of playing the endgame. And I think the reason Jan didn't go for this is because he saw Ding Liren was low on time. He wanted to keep queens on the board and apply more immediate pressure. Let's see what could happen here. Let's say king g8, king f4, king f8. Both sides are trying to bring their king closer to the center. Now knight to g3 can be played. After king e8, pawn to h4. And what's happening here is Jan is starting to finally press on the king side. This is where his advantage is. Look for moves like knight f5, maybe h5, and if a trade can be created, this king might be able to break through and start attacking the black pawns. So for example here, a dubious move that looks natural would be king d7, and after bishop to b6, now the threat is e5, and all of a sudden these pawns are becoming weak. We're finally able to start getting these trades. So I think queen c7 would have been an interesting try going for the queen trade, but Jan goes for a more practical decision, trying to get Ding to blunder in the next 9 moves. So he plays knight g3. After knight e6, pawn to f4. And Ding is pretty solid here. Plays pawn to h5. Maybe playing pawn to h4 next. So he's looking for a little bit of counterplay. He's not just playing passive. Pawn to c3. The idea here is it prevents knight to d4, which can be a good square for the knight. Pawn c4. Pawn to h4. And now Ding offers a queen trade. And we're at move 33. The best try for an advantage, according to the computer, is queen takes queen. But again, Jan says, I don't want the queen trade. It makes it too simple, and he probably assumed that Ding was holding that endgame still. So he plays queen b7, bishop to e8 played, defending the pawn. And this is kind of a cool idea by Ding. Look what he sets up. After knight f5, queen d7. So the bishop guards d7, the knight guards d8. This allows the queen to go back and forth, offering queen trades, and there's no good way for Jan to avoid the queen trade. So he plays queen b8 once, and then finally trades. So now in this endgame, we still have the 4 versus 3 king side for Jan, 4 versus 3 queen side for Ding. But without the queens on the board, it becomes more difficult for white to create winning chances. Here, knight to b7 was played. Pawn to e5, he's going for a passed pawn. That makes sense. This is move 39, and I think Jan is trying to pose some difficult questions to Ding right before the time control. What are you going to do with this pawn tension? Right? That's something new to think about in a position that could be kind of easy to play for the next 2 moves if Jan played, for example, king to g3. Ding keeps cool though, plays king g8, brings the king over closer to the action. And now knight takes d6 could become a threat soon. King g3 played, bishop to d7, bishop c7, knight c5. This is an interesting choice. Ding gives up the a pawn, knowing that this b pawn is going to be weak for a very long time, and he could pretty much go snatch it at any point. So now bishop takes a5 was played, and we see king to f7 by Ding Liren. We're now at move 42, so the players each have over an hour, and this is where they start to go into deep thinks and try to figure out, how can I play for an advantage? Can I try to squeeze something out of this position? And let's take a quick break in this video so that I can mention on April 22nd, we are going to have a free live game analysis on this YouTube channel. So you can submit your game in the link below and hopefully we'll see you there. All right, so now we had bishop to b4 by Jan, knight to d3 going after this b pawn. Jan is up 1 pawn, but Ding's about to win it back. e6 check, kind of interesting, but after the swap, now the players start shuffling. Knight takes b2, equal material. And at this point, you could see Jan's body language. He was not happy with that advantage that he had. Now going down to an equal endgame. The players make a couple more moves. And this final move, king to e3, really signals that Jan is not interested in playing for a win. He's just shuffling. And the players here shake hands and agree to a draw. So tomorrow we will be back with round number 2. We get to see Liren with the white pieces against Jan Nepomniachtchi. Be interesting to see what openings they play. Now go check out the link in the description. Submit your game so that you can be part of the game review and have it analyzed live. So thanks for watching and I'll see you tomorrow.